Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. So in today's video we're going to be taking a look at Sergeant Loadouts. So on your main infantry squads and your veteran squads, one guardsman out of the sort of 10 is a sergeant, and the only difference really is that you have +1 leadership and +1 attack from the sergeant. Whether he's a veteran sergeant or a regular infantry sergeant, you get that extra leadership and you get that extra attack. Now, for some regiments, the sergeant could be very important. And the main reason is not the extra attack, but it is the extra leadership. You see, without a sergeant, guardsman squads are only leadership 6, which is pretty pathetic, and it will mean you will be suffering quite badly from battle shock. However, with the big FAQ1 and the reduction in price of regular commissars, sergeants have become a little bit more disposable. 15 points to give all the squads leadership 8 is absolutely fantastic, and you can also improve their leadership with things like command squads and stuff. But for a lot of regiments, getting that leadership 8 with the commissar is really good, and it does mean that you can be a little bit more risky with your squads, with your sergeants. You don't necessarily have to play it absolutely safe. And so we're going to take a look at the sort of different loadout options, and we'll try and use some examples from different regiments. What would I recommend with different regiments, basically? So the basic weapon that your sergeant comes with is a lad's pistol and a chainsword. Now, lad's pistol's a pretty crappy weapon, and I'm going to be honest, it's a single strength 3 shot, 12-inch range. It can't benefit from pretty much any. It doesn't benefit from first rank fire, second rank fire. It's pretty poor, I'm going to be absolutely honest. The chainsword is actually a pretty good weapon though. The chainsword just gives you an extra attack. So if you have a chainsword, it means you get 3 attacks in close combat, which is pretty good. But still, you're only going to be hitting on 4s, so 3 attacks, very strength 3. So if you're lucky, even if you're facing guardsman equivalent, you've probably got about a 50-50 chance of actually killing anyone. So that's with the chainsword. That's with the basic loadout. So what a lot of people in the past have liked to do is to give sergeants bolt pistols. Now, I'm not actually a big fan of the bolt pistol, not in 8th edition, simply because, yes, well, basically in 8th edition, it just means you pay 1 point to get an extra strength. You get a strength 4 pistol, but you're still only a 12-inch range. It's just not really worth it, the bolt pistol, unfortunately. Now, the last pistol option that you have available to your sergeant is the plasma pistol. Okay, now plasma pistols are really good, and in the Imperial Guard they're only 5 points. Now, I don't know if that means you want to be putting plasma pistols on every squad, because if you've got 10, 20 infantry squads, that's going to cost you 50 to 100 points, which is not an insignificant investment. It's not bad. I mean, I guess if you've only got sort of 10 infantry squads, then 10 plasma pistols isn't too bad. But the thing with the plasma pistol is it's strength 7, AP -3. It's a massive step up from a lad's pistol and a bolt pistol, and it is really powerful. Now, as I was saying before, some regiments, or well, nearly every Imperial Guard regiment, can be a little bit more risky with the sergeants, and so if you do decide to put a plasma pistol on your sergeant and you do have commissars in your army, then you can very happily give your sergeants plasma pistols, because even if the sergeant dies and you lose his extra leadership, it doesn't really matter, because you've got the commissar around to keep people in line. However, the only thing is that if you're running, let's say, Catachans or Mordians, I should say, Catachans or Mordians, and you're relying on your just inbuilt ability to get leadership 8, which since the FAQ I often do. I just rely on my basic leadership 8 now. Then you don't really want to be putting plasma pistols on your sergeants, because when they die, your squads will still have +1 leadership for being Mordian or Katichan if there's an officer nearby, but they'll go down to leadership 7 because remember they're a leadership 6 base. So I think honestly though that Cadians could probably benefit from plasma pistols the most. Simply, the sort of two regiments which I would say could benefit from plasma pistols the most, and that is Cadians and Talon. Now, the reason I say Cadians and Talon is 2 reasons. Well, one, Cadian gets a lot of inbuilt rerolls. Naturally, for sitting still, you're going to get a reroll 1, so you can overcharge and not worry about losing your sergeant as readily. Or you can use take aim and reroll all misses, so that's really good. Now, Talon, the reason why I think they're pretty solid with plasma pistols is because they're very mobile. Most Talon infantry will be moving and advancing every turn thanks to their inbuilt sort of regimental doctrine. And also, when you buy a box of Talon Desert Raiders from Games Workshop, the sergeant comes with the plasma pistol. You don't really want to be snipping off all the metal plasma pistols. You probably want to keep those on the model. They are very good looking models. Because you're going to be on the move a lot as Talon, you're probably not going to be having heavy weapons. And so your plasma pistol becomes almost your second special weapon. Most other regiments will have a special weapon and a heavy weapon. I tend to find most Talon commanders have a plasma pistol and another special weapon, probably a plasma gun or a melter gun. Like I said, Cadians and Talon can use plasma pistols. Valhallan as well. Because you'll often have fluff-wise you'll have commissars with Valhallans. Now, I'd also would recommend, because these guys they are proper regiment guys, the Militar Tempestus. If you're using a lot of drop plasma scions, where you're deep striking in your plasma, having 2 plasma guns is great, but having that extra plasma shot is very, very useful, very, very useful. So. Having 9 plasma shots from a single 5-man scion squad with 2 plasma pistol is good. So I'd recommend it there as well, because also scion squads are smaller; they can be taken in units of 5, so you're not as worried about having crappy leadership as well. Just saying, it's not as big a deal. So they're the 4 regiments that I'd say can sort of get away with using plasma pistols and not worrying about losing their leadership, because they'll have other sort of commissars around. Now, I would say that the other option you have available if you don't want to take pistols, I know a lot of us were very fond back in the day, several editions ago, when you could take lasguns on your sergeant. Sadly, we can't do that anymore. If you want to do that, you've got to join the Gene Stealer cult, which I know a lot of people aren't a big fan of. But if you want to take a rifle-like weapon, for 1 point you can put a bolter on your sergeant. Now, there's almost no excuse not to. I mean, even if you take 20 infantry squads, you still only spent 20 points if you give every single one of those infantry squads a bolter on the sergeant. It just makes sense to put bolters on sergeants. The only reason I don't do it with my Mordians is for 2 reasons. One, I'm a massive cheapskate. I squeeze every single point. I say those extra 20 points, that's 5 extra guards. I'm literally that. 5 extra guardsmen, that's 5 extra lasgunners potentially. If I first went fire, second went fire, close range, that's 20 extra shots. So that's why I can be a massive cheapskate in that regard. And also, I don't want to cut up my metal minis. I love my Mordians. I don't want to be butchering them. But Mordians would putting a bolter on the Mordians makes sense because they're a shooting regiment, of course, and don't want the sergeant to die because I've stopped really taking commissars now, just because. Well, I know they're cheaper, but I've stopped taking them just because I've got basic leadership 8 anyway as Mordians. I can get it up to 9 with a regimental standard. That regimental command squad as well. Will have like a flag and an autocannon and other bits and bobs in it. I do sometimes take Lord Commissars, but I've tended to find that screw it with Battleshock now. I just take as many guys as I can get my hands on. But without getting distracted, so bolters are good on Mordians. They're also exceptionally good on Armageddon Steel Legion because you get an 18-inch rapid fire, which is great. And they're also very good on Vestroyans because Vestroyans get an extra 6-inch range for rapid fire weapons, so you have a 30-inch range bolter, which is very nice. Now, the last regiment that I haven't talked about is Catachans. And it goes without saying, really, that Catachans like to be in close combat. You get the strength 4, okay? You get the strength 4, and this sort of leads me on to my next topic, which is sort of close combat loadouts. So, we've talked about different pistols, plasma pistols being good, bolters being good, avoid bolt pistols. Close combat and guard is a tricky one. It is possible to create quite a powerful close combat guard army. It's just a lot more work than making a shooty one. You have to use things like priests to get +1 attack. If you're Catachan, you have to use things like Strachan to get another +1 attack. If you're going to go Catachans, you have +1 strength anyway. I guess throwing this out there, Krieg also kind of like to be in close combat as well because you've got weapon skill 3+. But I'd say both of these regiments kind of prefer to use close combat as a counter-attack rather than an actual main form of attack. If someone reaches your lines and starts hacking through you, at least with Catachans, you're not afraid of just getting stuck in there and going to town on them. Now, with Catachans, with most guard regiments, if you're doing close combat, the go-to weapon is the power maul because you want that +2 strength. The +2 strength on guard just allows you to wound any other line infantry on 3s, which is really important. And AP -1 is pretty good. It's pretty good. However, with Catachans, I would say you want the power axe. Okay, you want the power axe because you get +1 strength, and that makes you strength 5, so you're still winning people on 3s, but it's AP -2, which is a big difference. That's what you want. It's AP -2. Now, there is an argument to be said to put the power maul on your Catachan sergeants, because that makes them strength 6, which means they're wounding guardsman equivalent models on 2s. Personally, I still think power axes are the way to go, and you just represent that, I guess, by just having, Catachans have massive machetes, which are basically the equivalent of axes when you think about it. They're not swords like fine fencing swords or sabers that power swords traditionally look like. These are big, massive fuck off machetes. So it's reasonable to assume that you could use them as power axes, or you could just model some axes on. I mean, Catachans come from a Death World. If you're using a regiment that is based on Catachans, you can imagine they use axes for hacking through the undergrowth or hacking through trees. I'd say it's not a far stretch, but basically, if you're going to go close combat, my recommendation would be to put a power maul on your sergeants, unless you're Catachans, in which case go for power axe. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is cost. At the end of the day, both financially and in the real world, these sergeants are financially in the real world and points-wise, sergeants are cheap. Okay, Don't expect them to do a lot. And if I'm going to be absolutely honest, my preferred loadout is the last pistol chainsword, despite the fact it's the worst loadout. Why? Because it's free. And in the guard, quantity has a quality of its own. So yeah, if you start putting plasma guns on all those plasmas and all those sergeants, yeah, it helps, but it's expensive. All those plasma guns is a whole extra squad. You might have games where you're doing lots of long range shooting. Those plasma pistols aren't even going to be used. You will have games where all your plasma pistols never get used, especially if you're playing a more static army like Cadians. Yeah, you get all the rerolls, but you're not even shooting the plasma pistol most of the time. I'd say if you really want to upgrade, go for bolters, but I like last pistol chainsword. Like I said, just because it's absolutely 100% free, no cost, and you can't really go wrong with it. And having 3 attacks in close combat with sergeants isn't too bad, especially if you start adding a priest in there as well. You can get 4 attacks with a single guardsman. And last thing I want to say is, people always underestimate sergeants. People always go, I often find picking my dice up. I'll do a bayonet charge, just got a guardsman. My opponent will be like, so you got 10 attacks there? And I'm like, no, I got 12. And it's like, have you got 12 attacks? It's like, well, I've got 9 guys, and the sergeant gets 3. And I can't tell you the amount of times people go, your sergeant has 3 attacks. That's crazy. So, anyway, guys, that's it really. Sergeant loadouts. I guess the one thing to say is sergeants are kind of like a little microcosm of the guard as a whole, because they are very versatile, can be pretty much kitted out to do absolutely anything, but they have to be specialised. One thing I would avoid doing, guys, is a big trap, is putting everything on your sergeants. Just loading them up with plas pistols and power weapons. I wouldn't do both. I'd do one or the other. Because at the end of the day, this is a 4-point model. If you had a power sword onto him, you've doubled his points cost. If you had a plas pistol onto him, you've more than tripled his points cost. Okay? So, anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Please leave lots of comments on how you guys like to kit your sergeants out. Thank you very much, and I'll see you guys next time.